not gonna lie. This is the third take. Okay. Hi guys. So I'm going down to the basement in a few moments and I'm going to do a setup tutorial on a ball python setup. So there are people who keep in tanks, there are people who keep in racks. I don't care which spectrum you're on. I think keeping in tanks are great. I think keeping in racks are great. And I think that this is a happy medium between both. This is a standalone bin. So if you're interested in that, keep watching. Hey guys, so I just figured I would do a video on what I think that you will need for caring for a ball python, whether it's your first or your 10th, it doesn't really matter. This is just my opinion. So take that with a grain of salt. This is what I found had worked for me in the past when I had less ball pythons and I didn't have them in a rack yet. I don't hate on any specific way that people keep their ball pythons. You know, people can keep them in tanks, perfectly fine. People can keep them in racks, perfectly fine. I'm directly in the middle. I'm just, you know, happy to have the ball pythons. Like I said, I've seen the animals happy either way, so I'm not here to judge anybody. I'm gonna start with Substrate. So let's get that going. Use ReptiChip. I think it's great for holding humidity. If you can't get ReptiChip where you are, I recommend just Cocoa Husk in general. There's other brands, there's no name brands. You can get some at the hardware store. I don't really recommend the hardware store one just because I found it really dusty. If you can sift out the dust, I think that would be ideal with that particular brand. There's also Cocoa Blocks from Freedom Breeder. I've heard lots of good things about that brand. I haven't tried it myself. I personally just really like ReptiChip. So let's cut it open. So make sure that you take the paper out if your brand comes with paper. And I take very warm water and I just start to pour. Now, I've seen people soak them. There's nothing wrong with that. I personally don't like to let them soak. So what I do is I let this expand, and before it fully expands, I'm gonna slip it out of that bag. It's flipped out of the bag. I'm just gonna start picking away at it. A lot of the core is still gonna be dry. Like I said, I really like having the dry, wet mix because then the humidity isn't absolutely astronomical when I put the animal in. If you're not putting the animal in right away, then it's not a big deal, but this is just how I like it. So I'll just chip away at this for some time and I'll be back in a moment. I'm really happy with the consistency. I'm really happy with the amount of wet versus dry I have. It's kind of like 50-50. Like I said, I don't like it soaked. That's just my personal opinion. So we are going to put everything in this bin. But first, I kind of already did set it up, but I will show you how to set this up. Please listen close to all people who have ball pythons without a thermostat, and if you're looking at getting a ball python, this is your #1 tool for safety for not only your home, but your animal. This will protect your house from the mat catching on fire. This will protect your snake from getting belly burnt. This is so important. Get this first and foremost before anything else. Most thermostats are pretty basic in setting them up. So this isn't plugged in. It's a little dirty from my hands from the cocoa husk. So what you have here is your probe. So let's follow the gray cord. Now, you'll notice where I have this place is in between the bin and the tape. Now, this is heat tape. It will act the same as a heat pad from, say, PetSmart, for example. So you want a thermostat for a heat pad or a heat tape. Now, this particular heat tape I got from Dino's Reptiles. They have an online website. That's a Canadian site. For the States, I'm sure there's lots of places that you can order online if you were just to Google it. Cornell's World from Alberta also sells heat tape. Not sure on the cost difference between Dino's and Cornell's World, but I definitely recommend either company. Very good companies. This probe is on the black part of the heat tape if you're using heat tape. If you have a heat pad, it doesn't matter where you place it. I would say more in the middle general area. The type of tape that I have taping this down is not duct tape, contrary to what it looks like. This is foil tape. This is for like HVAC systems. It's heat resistant. It does not get that goo stuff quite like duct tape does. It's very nice tape. Has no effect from the heat. I recommend that tape to tape your heat pad or your heat tape down. Heat pads, yes, they do have an adhesive themselves, but I find they still kind of will peel back a little bit just because they're so heavy. So I do recommend taping them down a little bit. It won't hurt them. I keep the hot spot at about 90, somewhere around there. For a hatchling, I might have it a little higher. Just depends on their age. For me personally, I find everyone keeps their ball pythons at a different temperature. Some people like to keep an ambient temp at about 80. Some people like keeping their ball pythons at like 89 degrees. Some people like keeping them at 93. So my happy medium is about 90, 91, depending how old they are. This bin, I find, depending how well you pack it, this will be fine for a hatchling. I know some people will be like, this is too big for a hatchling. It's fine for a hatchling. And it's fine, in my humble opinion, again, for something up to 800,000 grams, depending on your snake's built. If they're chunky and a little bit funky, maybe you want to upgrade. It's all up to you. You can do the same exact thing with a bigger bin. This is just the bin I have to show you guys. All right, we got our rep to chip in. I like to make it a fairly thick layer. I might even go, yeah, I'm gonna go thicker than that. I'll probably go to about like there for it. Okay, let's add some other stuff. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a hide on the cool side, and I'm gonna put a hide on the warm side. That way, when they want to cool down, they still have a secure place to hide, and when they want to digest or warm up, they also have a nice place to hide. Onward to the water dish. Now, the placement of your water dish is dependent on your humidity levels. If you find that your humidity is low, put it closer to the warm side. So I'd even go as far as like that. You can use a smaller water dish. You could use a bigger water dish. It's all up to you, man. If you find that you have too much humidity, I would recommend a smaller water bowl on the cooler side, because heat, water, humidity evaporates in the air. Okay, onward. What I ended up with. Fixed. Okay, my fingers are in the way. Anyway, so I have a piece of wood here. I have a few leafy green things that are fake that I can disinfect as needed. Also, to disinfect, I use F10 veterinary disinfectant. You can buy this at Dino Reptiles. Recommended, 110% recommended. This is the best way to keep your animals sanitary. You can use hot water and vinegar. I did that before I ever even knew this product existed. I just really like the fact that this is like, it kills a lot of bacteria. It's awesome. Well, how do I tell the temperature within the enclosure? Do not rely on your thermostat to tell you what the temperature is. That I mean, again, this is not turned on, so let's play pretend. Say this read 91, okay? So this is what it is putting it out to, 91. Now, by the time that it gets through the plastic of the tub and through the substrate, you might not be getting the reading of 91. You could be getting the reading of like 87, for example. That's just an example. It could be way off too. I have some thermostats set to 101 because off the heat tape and in the bin, it reads 90. So you really have to know what your temperature is, and how I do that is a infrared thermometer. Now this will tell me what my temperature is throughout the whole entire bin.
I don't recommend misting your ball python, so if you find your humidity's low, there are other ways to fix that. You can add water to the substrate if you find it's dry, but humidity spikes are not great for your animal. Ball pythons have one lung, so you want to protect it at all costs. So humidity spikes aren't really the best thing for them. So spraying and causing like mist in the air for them to breathe in, that's not really a good thing for them. Some people have different opinions on that. Again, this whole video is just my personal opinion and my experience. I don't recommend.
It's kind of like the setup that I got going here. Again, this is the cool side, this is the warm side. It's just kind of like a recommendation. You can decorate it how you want to. I recommend, especially with younger ball pythons, definitely keep it cluttered. They like it cluttered. They really like dark, closed spaces. If you want to keep your ball python in a glass enclosure, that's completely okay. This is just one way to keep. Obviously, you can take it with a grain of salt. You know, for people that don't mind their snake being in a bin, this is a great alternative to have both enrichment and keeping your ball python like the most comfortable that they can feel. Things that I really like to have with my ball pythons. So we talked about the thermostat. That's a really important tool to have. Here's some other tools that you can use. So tongs. I don't like getting bit. I don't think anyone likes getting bit. So I got the longest tongs that I could, just because it's nice to be able to hold the rat out, you know, away from their face. This is a great tool to track your ball python's weight, and you know, if they're not eating, don't panic. It's okay. You can tamper with your husbandry. You know, you can try different feeders, but this is a great way to know if your ball python's losing weight. And if they start losing weight, maybe it's time for a vet visit or consulting someone who has a lot of experience with ball pythons. But, you know, say your ball python's 200 grams and then you weigh them the following month and they've lost quite a bit of weight, you know, that's something to evaluate. And it's nice to know what your snake's at. Plus, you can change your feeder size based on weight if that's how you want to go. Again, this reads the temperature of the bins. I find this extremely helpful, knowing where your ball python's husbandry is at. So if your ball python's not eating and you're not quite sure exactly what your temperature's at, this is a great tool to figure that out. F10, I did talk about this. This is a great disinfectant. You can use hot water and vinegar. I just really like the peace of mind that this gives me. Nicks. Okay, so any ball python that comes into my collection, even if they're in quarantine, gets nicks. So they go on paper towel, and I spray the paper towel. They do not get water during this process. It's just my own personal opinion. I mix water and this Nix, which is basically like a lice shampoo, is perfectly safe for your animals. But again, I don't recommend having water in it while it's damp on the paper towel. You can spray it in your hands and gently rub the animal. I don't rub the animal with it unless I've seen mites, but it's definitely something that's a good preventative for your collection if you go to an expo or, you know, whatever the case may be, wherever you pick up your animal. Even from someone who's well known, it happens. Mites are a thing. Yeah, so that's just a good preventative. Hooks. Some people think it's funny that people like to use hooks for their ball pythons. I don't use them for my ball pythons, but if you're uncomfortable, you know, picking up your snake right away, that's okay, and I'm not going to judge you for that. A snake hook is a great tool to let your ball python know that you're not food and you're not coming in for food. So if you lightly tap them on the head, you know, that is a good preventative way to not get bit. Again, this isn't really needed for a ball python, but if it makes you more comfortable, that's okay too. And that's just some tools that I recommend to keep around. Here's a setup for the ball python. so she can kind of do whatever she wants. She can feel secure anywhere in her enclosure, which I'm sure she really appreciates. You gotta remember, these guys, they live underground in termite mounds. Sure, they do venture. They're opportunistic feeders, so they don't really hunt a whole lot. Yes, they do hunt, but their preferred method is something to just stumble across them. They're definitely not just a pet rock, guys. So I'm going to be adding some enrichment to all my bins, just my personal preference. Again, I don't hate on any way that people keep. As long as you keep your animals sanitary and clean, fresh water and fed, I don't care what you do with them. They can be happy multiple different ways. So let's get the lid on this. Clip it in. If you have a bigger ball python, you can use the smaller bungee clips to clip to each side. That's just what I like.
Take 7. So I appreciate all the support that you guys have been giving me. I'm over 100 subscribers now. That was the tutorial. You can keep whoever you want to keep, as long as you're keeping your animals healthy. That's all that matters. This is just one way to keep your animal. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll be dropping another video probably tomorrow. So may the 4th be with you, and have a great day.